What is going on? Welcome to the first Built to Last Gym podcast. We decided to not only launch a podcast, but do this first one in video. So depending if you're listening, you might see or you might hear us. But the reason we started this show, me and Andy were talking about this right before we kind of started, was that as we were going up in the industry, there was resources, people, books, seminars, masterminds that we attended that really helped us, I would say, grow our business or get unstuck or get out of tough positions. And this was just a way for us to, give back, because a lot of the mentors that, helped us, one of the main things they say is pay it forward, right? And in the gym space, there's not saying there's not stuff, there's not enough stuff that I feel gets shared from folks that have been doing it for a long time. So
that's right.
We've been doing it for a long time. And Andy's been sometimes when I ask him, he's doing the whole looking it's 20s,
do the math.
A long time.
Yeah, been about 24 years in business.
So 24, I'm at 18 plus, so 40 plus years of experience going through the hard times and building businesses that have been built to last. They've had their struggles, because if you've been around for that long, everybody's had to come out of some tough times. But this show is all about sharing everything that we know, basically opening the kimono, as they say, the behind the scenes, and diving deep. And this first episode wanted to be about actually what Andy was presenting at the Vigor Ground Summit this past weekend, which was the 8P's of building a built to last gym. And I want to kind of dive into those, because I feel like, man, you did a great job, but I'm going to probably poke a little bit more, diving into stuff. So, where does it start? I love this kind of idea that we kept bringing up that most people don't have, which is the kind of perfect life, perfect business structure. I wanted to kind of dig into that, how you help people find that, what I call the point B on the GPS. What is it that you want to build? Yeah. How does that look like?
So I've talked to a couple people last night, and I think what's interesting in a lot of industries, if somebody goes to start a good business, they look at what existing models are out there, and then they build their business in accordance with that. Mm-hmm. In our world, that's a very rare thing. People just kind of jump out the window and they start building the business that they want. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it can leave you trapped by the model that you created. So I started to ask myself, how could I help people get out of that problem? And what I came down to is I think most people lack the clarity on what they want their business to actually provide for them. What type of lifestyle do you really want to live? So I think by getting clear on what do I want my life to look like? How much money do I want to make? What type of house do I want to live in? Do I want to have a family? What are the other considerations of what we want to do as a family? Vacations, where do we want to live in our community? And really just create this crystal clear picture of their dream life. And then you can use that dream life to inform you on the type of business that you actually need to create. So many people have these big aspirations and goals, but when you look at their model, they're constrained by that. Mm-hmm. They can't actually build a business to fulfill the aspirations around their life that they want. And I think it's because the order of operations is out of whack. They're just going into things right away with a lot of ambition and hustle, which I respect. And to be honest, it's exactly how I started my business.
And the thing is, and it is a thing that you have to have. Yeah. But the caveat, right? Some of the things you talk about, for example, when you say what's the constraint on a model, I would say if all you're doing is one-on-one training, you're a solo person, but you also want to be able to travel and build a family and this, that. It might not be the best model for that. I'm saying,
it
right?
Could, right? There's always contextual ways,
absolutely, there's
right?
contextual ways, but that's an example of it. Now, let me ask you this, because, and I know the same thing for you, right? If you got somebody that's in the industry, they're 23 years old, and what they believe their perfect life is going to be different than somebody that's 32, got a kid or two, right? But this is not, the point is they're just going to have a different point B on the GPS, and maybe when that 23-year-old coach, if they continue in the industry and they get to 32, they're going to have to,
change.
In the process, you're going to build a different life. And I think that's important, because I look back, right? We both had a vision. My vision for the longest time was, build a gym that's great at what we do. We impact a lot of people. It's very profitable when I buy this building. So the building then has, it's a business of itself. And okay, cool. Spent, my a decade plus busting my ass doing that. But now we were just talking out, when we were having coffee this morning, now I have a different
Yeah.
point B on the GPS of, you know, building a family and all these other things around it. So it's not about, you know, what's right or wrong. It's like, what's right for you right now? What is that direction? But you have to do it. And like, how many people do you, when you talk to, how many people have actually really done that?
Very few. And that's, I kind of want to back up and reiterate, like, I didn't do it that way. But what I've learned is, like, it's best to learn from the wisdom of other people's mistakes, even if they're your own, right?
100%.
So I told the story at, you know, the Vigor Summit that a very pivotal thing happened in my life. You know, I had been fighting for custody of my oldest daughter from 3 to 13. And I thought up until that point, I had created the life that I wanted. I was making good money. I'm flying on private jets. I'm training pro athletes. Like, I'm doing a lot of really cool stuff. But the minute I got custody of my daughter, that first day when I had to wake up at 3:45 in the morning, go train people, be to the gym by 4:45, come back, cook her breakfast, take her to school, go back and work, go pick her up from school, train a team, go back to the gym, and then get home at 9 o'clock at night, I realized that the business that I had built had trapped me into a position that was not going to allow me to be the best father that I wanted to be. And that was such a pivotal thing for me. And it was like, okay, I've got to figure this out. And, you know, another 10 years later, that was my focus. And now I do get to choose, you know, whether I take my daughter to school or not, which I take her to school every morning. I pick her up every day, with the exception of 2 days a week. My wife helps out there just because those are good days for her to do it as well. And our whole life as a family is set up in this way. We've set our businesses up to where we can prioritize the things that are most important to us. And I don't think anybody needs to do it the way I've done it, right? There's probably single guys listening to this, single women, or people that are married that have a different dynamic. I make no judgments. What's important is that you know what's important to you, and then you have the business acumen to build that type of business.
Agreed. And I think, like, in phases, right, too, I speak for myself, where I had that vision where it was like, all right, like, well, you know, first of all, I traveled a lot to learn and speak and so on and so forth. And even though I work a ton, that was part of my life. I go back home to Slovenia to see my family. So I have to be able to leave, you know, for multiple weeks or as much as 3 weeks at a time. Everything should run smoothly and so on. So that's part of the integration in that perfect business, perfect life. But then it was like, okay, well, when I'm, you know, initially I was married, then I got divorced. So I had a lot of time to work. I would say it changed for me, right? Like, I'm busting my ass, I'm buying this building. But the important part about it is that, you know, why I love that when we share the stage and we talk, it's like, look at these two different businesses that was the goal, right? And now we have different goals, but just we're kind of producing this new perfect life. And whatever it is for you, you know, you just got to get clear on what the hell it is. Right? And because if you don't get clear, you're going to be taking a lot of different directions. So that's kind of what it starts. We call it, you know, kind of like the gym business GPS, right? Like, you got to know where you're at. Actually, this is an important one that we talked about too. You know, point A on the GPS is you call it the truth. Which is figuring out where you're actually at, not where you think you're at. And we'll dive a little bit more in the KPIs, but talk a little bit about that, though, just from a standpoint of, you know, yourself, where you find yourself in situations where you're like, oh shit, you know, when I look at it, the truth is not what I thought it was, or the guys that you've coached, you know, where they're like, well, yeah, I'm doing this, that, and the other, but once you dive into the business, you find the truth, and you find the true point A on the GPS, which I think, you know, that's happened to me plenty of times in my life and career, right? You kind of got some blinders on, then you start looking at some real data, and it slaps you in the face, and you realize your point on the GPS is somewhere else than where you thought it was.
Yeah, truth isn't supposed to be subjective. It's supposed to be objective. So I think without the clarity of what you want, it's really hard to even identify, am I running my business in the best way? So the truth in that situation for somebody would be like, I don't even know if I'm running my business in the right way. But furthermore, if you start to look at data, so it's clarity and then really data, the numbers really tell you everything. They tell you, are you moving in the right direction or not? Are you as good as you think you are? And it's staring right at you what you actually need to fix and improve on. So if you can then admit the truth by way of the clarity and the data, we now have an opportunity to create an action plan to move you towards the next place that you want to be. But a lot of people, especially in my experience, a lot of coaching programs and masterminds are not set up to really extract the truth out of people. It's set up to teach them very valuable skills that they need to learn that will help them grow their business. But we're always under the assumption that this person is telling the truth, that they are actually aware of the truth. And while I appreciate that, in my experience, that's just not how it is. Most people are kind of, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but they're kind of hiding behind the truth that they want the world to see and how they want everybody to perceive them, instead of like, what's really going on under the hood, and are you really moving in the right direction?
I think that's the word, under the hood.
Yeah.
And it that little square, like unconscious incompetence, right? Where a lot, I don't know what I don't know.
Yep.
And finding out the data, and again, depending what type of business you have, like everything has metrics to like, what's the thing that drives things forward? What's the things that tells me what's going on?
Yep.
Right. And obviously in the gym business, you have, your leads, your strategy sessions, your conversions to trial, conversions to membership, but then attrition is like, I found that so few people, I would say kind of check their attrition, because attrition is telling you like, hey, we're doing a good job with retention, right?
I got a good story on that really quick, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, drop it, man.
So it's, and he would appreciate, he'll know I'm talking about him when he hears this, but I've got a great mentorship client that I've worked with, and he's heavily focused on acquisition, the way a lot of people are right now. I need more leads, I need more clients. They're just like doubling down on acquisition. And we started talking, and I didn't think that he needed to start doing paid ads, but he wanted to do it. And he comes back to me and he's like, you were right. I spent a lot of money. I didn't get the acquisition numbers that I thought. And in that moment, I kind of knew now he might be willing to hear what I wanted to say up front. It's like, what if we just looked at all the people that you've lost this year and we added them back into your bottom line? In any months that you were running above the industry average of attrition, we got really serious that like we closed that gap next year. So we improve attrition, and he was blown away when he ran the numbers about how much more income he would have made this year. And I think a lot of people, they think they have other problems, think they have the lead problem, the acquisition problem. But when they really start tracking data, or they have the opportunity to work with somebody that can like I'm gonna allow you to do what you want to do in your business, but I will, as a coach, reflect back to you my opinion on that. And if it didn't go right, I'm gonna try to get you to see that as well. And it's really important, because I think people are convinced now they can just kind of buy their way to a successful business. And that hasn't been the case in a really long time. Like, I know we were running Facebook ads, a million years ago, when it was like, you turned them on and it was like money, just fell out of the sky. And that's just not how it is anymore.
No, and it doesn't mean that they don't work, but it means you have to be so much more thorough on the back end, know your numbers, be good with follow-up, have good retention, and not have high attrition. So really at the end of the day, what ends up happening a lot of times is I feel like, by the way, again, I found myself in that throughout my career too, where you're avoiding stuff, so you need to chase a cool thing, a new strategy in marketing, a new software, let's add another group model, whatever. Now look, I'm not saying it might not be the right choice, but many times it's the avoidance of just doing things exceptionally well, right? You don't want to look at like, oh shit, our attrition's at 6%, 7%. Man, we only have like 20% of people that are leads actually showing up for strategy sessions. That's probably too low, right? And then you go and try to figure some other cool thing out, but really you just got to dial in on that, because it is a numbers game.
The basics.
The basics.
The basics.
And the thing is, that brings me to the first, which is like our philosophy is strong on this, right? When we look at product, right? Actually, before we go to product, we talked about
we talked about purpose.
But let's, like that coaching first mentality as a gym. And obviously we have coaching gyms, right? If there was a person here from LA Fitness, they might be saying something different. But but our whole, everything we've done over the course of these 2 decades in the gym business is like coaching is the main thing. Like, because it's essentially the only thing foundationally from a standpoint, like we're gonna get folks a great experience, great coaching, so we can get the 3 R's: results, retention, referrals.
Yes, sir.
Right? And talk a little bit about that, like coaching first mentality, because again, if you had to share our coaching philosophy in business, it's a coach first mentality.
Yeah, 100%. Coaching first is what worked for me for a decade. It's all I really cared about. And I know in the beginning you were into the business coaching stuff, but from what I know of you and what I've heard, it was always coaching first. It's
Always,
the energy
yeah.
that I create. It's the experience that I create. It's my ability to show my expertise. That is so important for somebody when it comes to the product. And I think, again, if we get back to the truth, a lot of people really struggle to assess how good of a coach they are. And I think that's one thing that you and I can uniquely help people with, is we know what good coaching is. We have a network of the most elite coaches in the entire world. And we can help people really fast forward that part of things. Because in my experience, and I use the analogy in the summit, so if people that were at the summit are hearing this again, hopefully you like it as much. But we talk about the food, and this is something that a mentor of mine explained to me, is that the food is the product of a restaurant. And if you go into a restaurant, you show up, they comp your valet, they give your wife a flower, the ambiance is perfect, they have all your favorite foods on the menu, the food comes out in good timing, but then when you and your significant other take a bite of that food is terrible, there's a really good chance you're not coming back. Now, because of all those other things, like, you might come back again, but there's a very good chance if the food is bad, you will never visit them again. So the product of a restaurant is food. The product of a coaching gym is coaching.
It's coaching. Yeah.
It's coaching and training. And you have to be very, very good at that. And you mentioned that kind of 4 stages of learning, from like unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. I don't know what I don't know to I do this and I don't even have to think about it.
The only thing I know.
It's just how it happens. That is not an easy thing for people to traverse without guidance. What's helped you and I both is the people that we've been able to get close to. We've been able to get around excellence, and that gives you an idea of what's required to be an excellent coach. And that if you understand that first, and you understand like what's required to develop a high pedigree of coaching, if you focus on that and just that, you will create raving fans, not superficial followers that just kind of want to come and try things out or be voyeuristic and watch you online.
And that idea, so I think both of us did this, where, I call it collecting role models. My first, decade in the industry, so much of it was collecting role models in coaching. So I would, travel everywhere, spend all my money on certification seminars and staffs, but mostly being around people a lot, where I would see what coaching excellence is.
Yeah.
So you create a standard, right? Because, look, imagine you go to, and I'm just gonna make, create an example, but like, you go to big box gym and, you want to become a good coach, and maybe like the standards, maybe the top standard is actually not that high of a standard for the industry, right? And you might not even be following the top standard in that gym.
That's right.
So now, what's your feedback loop? What is your, what role model are you collecting? And for me, it was like, hey, the best of the best of the best in the world, I was around them, I immersed in what they did. I then compared how I'm doing things to how they're doing things.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what you pushed for. I want to do it as well as them, man. I may be even better someday, right? Like, but I can see it. I can see. And viscerally feel exactly what that looks like, right? And study it. And that, and the thing is, now I feel that a lot of it is kind of like, well, just create a good experience. And it's like, experience is very important, but to me, both of those things together are coaching. Your training programs, how you coach those programs, the communication in the training session, how you start, finish it, the things that you say, communication, obviously, right? Like, all those things are, I would say, in that bucket.
For sure.
So, and I believe if you don't have a high standard now, with the way things are going, you just become more and more of a commodity, right? And that's dangerous.
Especially if you only focus on experience, because that is the big thing that we keep hearing about. And I'm not saying that's not true, but there's some context that needs to be sorted through.
For sure.
When you say the experience, I think what most young coaches these days hear is complex, fancy exercises, high energy, rah-rah stuff. And to be clear, I'm not saying that's wrong, but you better have a whole lot more in there than just the rah-rah stuff.
Yeah.
You actually have to have some substance to what you're doing. So the word experience probably needs to be defined through the lens of the model that you run. Like, if you're running a large group primary program, boot camp style, like, man, energy is a huge component of that. If you're running a small group session of like 1 to 3 or 1 to 6 or semi-private 1 to 3, like, listen, if you're like jumping off the walls, high-fiving people, that's not going to create an experience necessarily that wants people to stay.
It may backfire, right?
It could backfire.
And it is contextual. I mean, I think that coaching, for example, and back to models, right? We talked about the model that you need to have to build the business that you want, the life that you want. And I've had that experience where, great one-on-one coach was actually a terrible group training coach.
Yep.
Because their energy wasn't there. Obviously, you need to be much more high energy on average, right? You need to take people on a roller coaster. You need to communicate with a lot of different people differently in one group setting. And, you're not doing that in one-on-one, right? By the way, one-on-one semi-private, I've had coaches that struggled moving from the one-on-one setting to like a 3 to 4, and some people adapted, some people did not. And, that's okay, because I had coaches that go like, I just want to do one-on-one training, and then ended up going and doing that, and that's fine, and they were successful with it. But the nuances, the reason why we're coming back to this is because if you think that like, well, coaching is coaching, it's like, no, right? There's deliberate practice in every single area to develop your skills as a large group training coach.
Yeah.
Small group, semi, one-on-one, right? Super elite athletes, right?
For
like
sure.
Youth performance. We were just talking about a scenario, in your gym where it's like, here's a great fit for youth sports performance. Here's somebody that thought that they were, but then they started doing it like, whoa, this is different.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. You're dealing with kids. You have to have a different type of, I would say, characteristics and skills to.
You need patience.
You need a lot of patience. Without patience, you ain't gonna do shit.
Yeah.
But and it's very easy to jump the gun and go like, all right, cool, this is good enough. All right, let's move on to like crush marketing, this, that, the other. And I think that what happens is that people do that and they never come back, meaning to improve the product, constantly improve the product, constantly improve the product. But for us, and we're sitting here talking about this, I would say that because we've constantly came back to the product, years down the line, we got to make it better. Learn a lot of new things. Things have changed. We got to make it better.
Well, even right now, in my own business, we have to continue to make our product better. As we continue to grow, and because we're a little short-staffed right now, there's a stress test there for your team. And my team is incredible, but they're serving a lot of people. And I can see now, because I'm not inside the business, right? I'm in the CEO visionary role and kind of able to see things. And I'm seeing now that like we've got to clean some stuff up. And my team is incredibly dedicated to that. So it's very easy for me to say, hey guys, like we got to keep buttoning up the product. But here's what's interesting, or what I find interesting. What if I didn't know what a good product looked like? How could I help my team? So that's another, I think, forgotten element is like, I know what it should look like. And if you're the best coach in your building and you start pulling yourself out, you're still going to have to be there to connect the dots for your staff. So I want to reiterate again, my staff is incredible. They do an incredible job. But one of our company values is Kaizen, constant and never-ending improvement. That doesn't just mean like they work out and read books. That means we're very honest with ourselves about the product we're putting out to the clients that we serve, and we're committed to like innovating that and changing it to always have the best product in our community. And
that's the thing, you should feel that. Like, I put on these events where I feel like we bring out the best of the best, but as you're at the event and somebody's presenting, I'm like, we could do that better.
Yes.
Right? Like, man, we do that a lot, but we do it all the time. You should be checking yourself because you're so committed to improvement. You know what I mean?
And excellence.
And excellence. And I think, so some of the lessons here are, to me, it's like, man, correct role models, get around extremely high standards. Make sure you have feedback loops always, right? And then sometimes feedback loops are events.
Yes.
Right?
Going to
so
events.
You have internal feedback loops, and then externals, like I go to an event, I'm like, oh, damn, dude, I thought we had the best XYZ going on, but that's killing it. Yeah. Okay, I got a new standard now that I want to achieve. And so, if the product is coaching, how often are you doing that? And that's what we've seen. That's what I would say, like, why our business coaching is also different because we really shine a
done
light
a
on
lot of
that.
that.
Really like, shine a light on that.
I don't think there's two people more qualified to evaluate your coaching product. And
I agree. And
I hope that doesn't sound arrogant to anybody listening. I just don't know many people that have the experience we do who also have the competence and business acumen to guide people in that direction.
I mean, there's a proof of concept.
Yep.
And also, we're doing this podcast on a turf on a Sunday. Yeah, so there you go. That's how dedicated we are, bro. But that takes us to positioning, which is marketing. But I like the construct of, you know, what you also talked about, which is there's three aspects to it. There's density, there's depth, and there's dedication.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that. Like, what do those things mean that people can kind of connect to?
So I think when people think positioning, they immediately go to marketing. And there's another form of marketing, you know, grassroots marketing. Some people call ground game marketing. But density refers to the density of impact you've had in your marketplace. How much market penetration have you had? So I relate this to having an undeniable body of work. A lot of people want to have position, but they haven't done anything for the consumer to look at and be like, all right, they are experts. They are at the top of the chain when it comes to what they do. So the burden of the business owner is you actually have to go create that. And I think people want to hack their way to that, find the right reel or viral video, and while that may work for some people, what I know 100% of the time works is being ruthlessly committed to delivering great results across your entire marketing community. Too many people want to hide behind their computer these days, and they don't really think about the community that they serve. So the density of impact that you can actually make comes down to having an undeniable body of work.
Undeniable body of work. I like that. And it, you know, for instance, for a new coach, new gym owner, this is where my thought process goes right off the bat, right? Like, I look at when I started in the garage gym, my undeniable body of work was that, you know, after 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, there was a lot of people that were coming out of there going like, man, these results are crazy. And back then it was like also the era of before and after pictures. So I had a lot of before and after pictures, but also like before and after pictures, reviews, word of mouth. A person would go, I'll tell you what an undeniable body of work is. This is, you know, actually from a scenario from here. So we had a client come in, a new client, got very good results. And, you know, the first 4 months, very visible transformation, right? I don't even have a before and after picture. I'm just seeing him and I'm like, you know, hey man, like, damn, like you look way better. What's going on? Like, oh, I'm down 24. Damn. And his shoulders popping. But from that, guess what? Their friends and family are saying that, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, what are you doing? Like, you got to come to Vigor with me. So now there's like 4 or 5 of a group of friends and family from, by the way, 3 or 4 of which have had really good results, which now continues to spread,
Ripple
right?
and ripple and ripple.
That in itself, you know, whether you have the before and after, yep, great if you have it, great if you have a testimonial, but in itself, that's undeniable proof.
Yes.
Just like, you know, man, 8 kids like went from a 18-inch vertical to a 26-inch vertical over the last 6 months. If that's obviously what they want to achieve, like that's proof. So proof also to me creates confidence, right? Because it's like, I always say there's this formula for confidence that number 1 is competence, right? Like if I get better at the skill, I'm going to feel more confident than if I got proof. If you come to me and go like, hey man, like I'm into my 40s, but I want to get my vert up, I want to get my athleticism back. And after 5-6 months, you're like, dude, like I'm feeling like almost like in high school again, right? Now I have proof, so I'm more confident, right? And number 3 is courage, because you got to lean into shit, right? Like you can't, you know, you can't just smoothly do stuff you've never done before and never have to take courageous action. But if you do those 3 things, you'll build confidence. Yes. And I think that in and of itself, because certainty sells, we talk about that. Yeah. But now we got something. Now we're steamrolling, right? But that's what I would say positioning part 1 density is. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people actually say that.
I don't think they do either. I think positioning is looked at from a pure, like, how do I capture the maximum amount of attention to leverage the mind of the consumer that I'm an expert? And like the low-hanging fruit there is what we're talking about, like just doing a really good job. But people are trying to hack their way to things. And I think that's just the way the world is moving right now. Marketers market to your self-interests and our desire to make things easier. But the reality is, I don't know one person with a successful gym that has gained a great and optimal position without a ton of sweat equity and results to show for it.
Absolutely, especially in a medium to long term, right? Because in the short term, you can get some angles, you can jazz it up.
Yeah.
You know, that's the funny part about it too. Like for a while, there was like, you'd go on sites and there's like 100 before and afters, but they were stolen from somebody else,
Right.
And then you couldn't tell, and it's
Yeah.
like, but those people were getting people in their program, but not getting them results. So don't be that.
West.
Don't be that
Wild
person.
West.
Don't be that person. So let's talk about that second component of positioning, which is depth.
Yeah. The depth is about relationships. It's about the depth of the relationships you have with your community, other businesses. This could extend all the way into the chamber, local networking groups. But the way that I talked about it at the event was that it really relates well to lifetime client value. If people in our industry talk about the difference between transactional relationships and transformational relationships, but I'm not so sure everybody actually approaches things that way. There are people that I know that I've asked them questions about their clients, and they don't know their client's husband's name. They don't know what they do for work. They don't know how many kids they have. And if the relationship is that superficial, the only like bonding capital there is the training experience. Through the training experience, though, if you can learn to connect with somebody and get to know them as a human, man, there are very few worlds where you have that proximity to somebody and you get to know somebody so well. That's why a lot of trainers are like, I'm a part-time therapist, It's because people feel comfortable talking to you. They look to you as a leader and a guide in your life or in their life. And you can really leverage that. And I don't mean from a tactical standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean from like, if you really care about people and you impact their life, they're going to stay with you. And like, we literally have kids that we trained as 12-year-olds that are now coming to our gym as 30-year-olds. So as they grew up, some played college sports, some didn't, but as adults, when they were looking for a gym, they came back to us. And I know for a fact, through conversation with these guys, it's the relationship that we've always had. And the other thing I talked about is all the relationships that I have, it's not like I went out and tried to get them last week. I've been accruing these relationships for decades.
Yeah.
The way a lot of people try to do things now is, I'm going to go out and try to get connected with this person, stand next to this person for some immediate benefit. And anybody that's a professional they can smell that, they can sense it. You just can't hack any of this stuff, and I'm just going to keep reiterating that. And the more you want to get positioned faster, the more you're going to struggle. But if you make a big impact and have an undeniable body of work, you build incredible relationships with people, and you continue to invest in them, you will rise in the position of your community. It's hard to not do that if you actually do those things.
And I got a lot to say on that, because no matter which way you look at it, whether it's in the gym, I'm going to give some examples of just in industry, right? Which, like this weekend was an example where I'm having, Martin tells the story of like the first day that we met 18 years ago.
Yeah.
When I walked into Parisi Speed School, and then it took many years to develop that relationship to where we started doing stuff together and speaking and whatever else may be, right? Like when we met, like every story has this like long tail, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was consistent work on it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, okay, cool, met you, all right, your business card, got you on my phone. When I need something, I'm gonna hit you up. Like that's.
Dude, you might not even remember. I remember meeting you like one of the second or third times that we met, and I said we were at a restaurant somewhere around here. It was a restaurant, like I feel like attached to a mall. And I said, man, one day we're gonna do something together.
I remember that.
And it's like,
I remember that.
I just knew I was committed to like staying connected because of how good you were, what you were doing, and I was intentionally trying to create that network at that time. Going back 13, 14 years, I had good strength and conditioning mentors, but I didn't have a lot of peers that when I got next to them, I was like, oh, okay, this is the dude I need to stay connected with. And when we got connected, I was like, okay, me and this guy eventually are going to do something. We have a lot of shared values. Mm-hmm. We really look at a lot of this stuff in a unique way that a lot of people don't. And I just knew that one day we'd be doing something like this.
And here we are,
right?
we are, damn it. But
So I've invested in you, you've invested in me, right? It's
100%.
the same thing that we're talking about on the gym and client level.
And that, but when you tell those stories, right, like, and you go like, yeah, we started training somebody at 12, now they're 30, 32. But that, when you try to, you can't rush it. You have to, it's just like rushing cooking, right? It's like if it says, nah, man, like this steak's got to be, this how long it has to be in a cooker or whatever it may be, the ribs, right?
Yep.
You're like, no. I want it in 15 minutes. It's like, it tastes like shit. You know what I mean? It's gonna get burnt. It's like, you don't want to burn a relationship. So
there it is.
I think it's such an important factor. And last part on positioning is dedication.
Yeah, which is super important because, and this comes back to the truth and it comes back to clarity, like how dedicated can you be to a thing that you're not certain is actually what you want to do, right? So I see that as an issue with a lot of people. I had talks with a lot of people last night, and that's kind of what they were lacking, was the clarity and certainty of the direction they were going, so they weren't being dedicated to the best things that they could do to grow the business.
Yeah.
So for me, what's always worked is like plan B was to make plan A work. It was just like, that's what I'm going to do. The minute that's, Joe and Jay both were two of the first guys I knew that had garage gyms. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I had been working in big box gyms and I was working with athletes, but I hadn't really seen like a garage gym. And I was like, oh, that's for me. And I just knew that from the very beginning. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So I had that clarity. And that made it, I'm not going to say easy. There was no other choice when 9/11 happened. I was in business then. I had to keep going. There was no other choice when the housing crisis happened in 2006, 2008. I had to keep going. When the pandemic hit, there was no choice. I have to keep going. So I think the dedication comes from the clarity of knowing what you want. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know what I want, like I have a lot of empathy for you, but you have to get out of that space. You have to make a decision about the direction you want to go. And it comes back to what we started this conversation off with. What type of life do you want? Will the business that you're building actually get you there? And if not, you need to start considering options that will, because you do not have the luxury of staying stuck. If you stay stuck and you stay indecisive, people will pass you up and you'll be having the same story at a bar with a guy like me next year. And that's not what I want for anybody listening to this.
Man, and a couple of things that I'm hearing you say and like that pop up to my mind is, when you have no plan B, it's like that saying, you don't change your vision, you change your strategy, right?
Yes.
Times change, markets crash, so it's like, oh man, this strategy ain't gonna work, but I'm not gonna change my vision.
Yep.
And what I've said to people that say, I don't know what I want, is that saying of like, direction is more important than destination.
Yes.
Right? It's like, if you start moving in the right direction, you get more clarity. But you can't do it standing still. I see a lot of folks today that are kind of like, you watch a webinar, you read a book, and then you're sitting there and like, you're not moving, you're thinking through what you're gonna do. And I'm like, you gotta go do shit. Sometimes when you start moving towards a destination, it helps you get clearer. Like, it's kind of like in the middle of the ocean, right? You go somewhere, you're gonna get closer to the land.
What's that saying?
Now see,
I don't need to know all the steps, I just need to know the next one.
Next step, that's it.
Like, that's it.
And that's movement, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's movement. And like, a close friend has been a member here for the longest time, and we've had this discussion. I'm like, you're not doing anything, and the less that you do, the less clear you'll be.
100%.
You know what I mean? The more that you do, you might go somewhere that is not where you want to end up, but guess what? You can actually move and see and then make a change, right? And it's like, man, I know I love coaching. I don't want to know what type of business I want to build. Cool, you know what? Go to the gym, start coaching a lot of people. You'll run some classes, run some one-on-ones. Like, oh man, you know what? I really love that. Okay, cool. Boom.
What's that saying? Momentum is better than motivation. Right?
100%.
Like motivation is fleeting, and I think that's what people are looking for. They're waiting to be like, that's my why, I'm so motivated, I'm gonna go crush it. And it's like, man, the way you find your why, the way you find your purpose is not intellectualizing with it. In my experience, it's going and doing things. And then it's like the world, universe, God, however, what lens you look at things through, it like conspires with you to like figure it out and fill in the details. But if you're just analyzing and thinking your way through this, you're going to struggle. It requires movement.
And I'll say purpose is not found, it's forged. Right?
I like that.
Right? It's like you don't just like, it doesn't hit you. It's the same thing as like the passion hypothesis from, Cal Newport, right? It's like you don't, a passion doesn't just hit you. Like you work harder and you get more passionate about stuff.
Absolutely. But his hold on, that's a good point. I don't want to pause on that because that book I actually shared with somebody last night too. It doesn't matter what you're passionate about. It matters what you can be good at. And that comes back to the other stuff we were talking about positioning and how model can affect positioning. You have to be clear on what you actually want to do. You just got to keep hammering that point home.
Yeah. No, that's important. Ooh, I mean, I could dive on this one, but we got a lot of stuff to cover, which is great because you know why? Because we're gonna do a lot of these episodes. But today's episode is specific to the 8P's. So, next one's people.
Yep.
The who, what, where.
Yeah. So the who is like who you're gonna hire, right? And everybody. Is
that more like the who's the side, the culture fit, the value side of it?
I always start with the values. And I shared yesterday how I think most business owners now know when you hire somebody, you should hire from your values. Well, that's a harder thing than it sounds.
No, it's catchy.
Yep. Most coaches don't know their values to begin with.
Yeah.
And they're borrowing somebody else's values a lot of times. So then when they hire somebody, they struggle to look at that person through the lens of those values. And I've made that mistake multiple times. And I think when it comes to who's, you have to be very clear on your values and you have to have an evaluation system to make sure they're a fit. And the best piece of advice I could give anybody is do not hire from your heart, hire from your head. There will be times in your business where the mom of little Johnny could be a good admin for you and you hire her. I don't think that's a bad idea. There will be times where you have members who are like, they might be a great representation of your company and you want to hire them to be a coach. There's a time for that stuff, so I don't want to discourage anybody from that. But those are also examples that I see a lot of people making mistakes. They bring people in because they're a little uncertain about the job they have to offer somebody. They can't pay a lot. They're looking for somebody really close to them and hoping that they're going to be a good fit. Instead of being really clear on the person that I'm looking for, you need to be very clear of your customer avatar. You need to be very clear on your trainer avatar too, the type of person that you're going to hire.
Yeah, because the thing is like if on that side, right, like if you rush it or if you don't know what you're looking for, man, that can go incredibly wrong, right? Because now all of a sudden, the more, I would say, of the who's you instill, but they're not the right fit. It's much more difficult now because they could affect the culture, right? And that might be your biggest, your culture, your community, the way that you do things. That's your biggest, I would say, plus and differentiator. And now you're like, well, shit, I need somebody to take over X, Y, Z. I need somebody to do these things. And now you're rushing it, and all of a sudden it's like, damn.
Yeah.
It would have been better off if I just hustled longer and had a little bit more of a process to get the right person, which, I've done that plenty of times. So it's like, you've been in business for almost 20 years. It's like, we're speaking from the mistakes.
The wisdom of our mistakes.
So,
we could call this podcast the wisdom of our mistakes.
It definitely could be, right? But then when you start with the who, what and where, what are those two components on when it comes to people and the hiring process?
So the who is like who they are relative to your values and relative to the fit that you're looking for in your organization. The what is like, what are we going to do with them to actually bring them up to speed? And the what for me for many years was like, you're going to hang out with me and you're going to learn through osmosis. And man, it actually worked pretty good. There's been a couple guys that have worked for me that they're very good coaches. And it's really because they spent a lot of time with me. One of my good friends, he's worked for me now, I guess 13, 14 years, is a guy named Kelly Fields. He's also one of the best wide receiver coaches around. And Kelly was that guy that was with me every day, all day. And in his own wide receiver business now, he does a great job of also doing speed training and deceleration training. And it's because he was around me all the time. But as your business grows, you have to have a better process to onboard coaches. Your program's going to maybe get a little meatier. You might have different options that require different skill sets. You might have people shifting into leadership positions and management positions, and you've got to figure out how to train them. So our next evolution was like a PowerPoint slide deck for 12 weeks, 6 weeks practical, 6-week manual, checkpoints, the whole nine, to get a coach up to speed. And that worked really well too, but my training director was married to that process. So we bring in interns, and now all of a sudden his director job and his coaching responsibilities, he's put under more stress. So the next phase for us was to create this 8-week onboarding system that is basically a course that people go through that also allowed us to take a look at the inefficiencies or the lack of clarity in the way we were doing things before and really button that up. And we've developed a really good 8-week coach onboarding system before we ever hire somebody. So we are taking the burden of getting them up to speed to giving them a shot to actually be able to do the job. And at the end of those 8 weeks, if there's still not a value fit, or maybe through these checkpoints of the 8 weeks, we saw something that just we weren't a fan of, we're not hiring you. We're going to let you go and feel good that through those 8 weeks, we just put a better coach out into the community. Whether they come train with us or not, I'm dedicated to putting better coaches out in the community because I'm betting that the market rewards the people who are better. And if you don't get hired by us and you go somewhere else, you're probably going to be one of the best coaches there.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be better than the people in our building.
Yeah.
And that's what I double down on.
Which essentially too, like what you end up doing is like you're helping somebody improve, but they might not be up to standard of what you're looking for, and it's a double win. I mean, in that scenario it is because hey, like look, you're not the standard.
Yep.
Go somewhere else, develop more, maybe later on even come back. But either way, it's like you have a process that means you got to go through these steps to be able to even be at the standard to be here. And like that development, because same thing for me, like for the longest time, everything was, and there's still a lot, I would say, of that feedback loop, right, in our business. But we streamlined a lot of things where the creation of videos so that like, hey, I'm gonna watch this, go through these checklists. This is how you do it. Now you're still gonna watch it, you're still gonna shadow, you're still gonna do hands-on, you're still, I shared this during an event where I said, this model of like, I do it, and you're with me. You do it, and I'm with you.
Yeah.
And you do it. And eventually, if you have somebody in your, I know in your business that you do as well, where it's like now that person does it, and somebody does it with them, right? Because their standard is high enough to where they can train others. But for a lot of the years at the beginning, I would be constantly reteaching this a million times over, rather than taking someone like now you can shoot a video or and go high level. You create a course on the back end. It's like, this is our model. Here's the test, right? Like
your YouTube is a tremendous resource alone just for coaches.
That's like what I started doing that as a double whammy because it was just like, I'm going to teach. I mean, I remember I would do an in-staff with the team. Yep. And the stuff I would teach on the in-staff, I would then afterwards shoot
a video on it
and literally call it an in-staff, right? And I'm like, well, all right, I can now give this to every one of my next coaches or interns, but I'm also going to put it on YouTube for everybody else to watch, give value to the world.
There's a cheat code for you. Film your in-staffs. That's a good way to do things.
Yeah, like I would say like film your in-staffs. Like this coming Saturday, I'm doing another nutrition seminar. The nutrition seminar is going to be called Build Your Own Nutrition Blueprint, right? So it's like I'm going through the presentation slides, but I'm making people do stuff, and they're going to be different. Hey, if you're cool with tracking this way, cool. If not, here's an idea. Let's build it out. But I'm going to record that, right? And guess what? Like that's for my coaches to help their new clients in a 30-day do it. Yeah. That's for coaches online. Like that might want you, I mean, I just had somebody ask me if I'd come in and do an in-staff for small group personal training. We watched your video XYZ years ago, right? Just shoot. This fear of giving your best stuff away is kind of, I think, crazy because it actually attracts more, right? Like there's a whiteboard there that I haven't shot on yet. That's a two-sided one, will probably be a four-sided. Yeah. That's going to be a 30 to 40 minute YouTube video on program design, right? That's going to go to internal plus external, right? So
somebody listening to this is probably saying like, yeah, Luka, like all this stuff. Not everybody is at your level, right? And I think coaches struggle to admit this, but once I've talked to enough of them that they were like, hey, look, I would love to do in-staffs for my team, but I just don't feel comfortable, and I want them to learn from somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's where they could use your YouTube and InStaffs.
100%.
They could use our onboard coaching program. There's a lot of other ways to do it. Like, for example, every coach, and this is still relevant to the what, right? Every coach that we have is a 90-day education rock. So outside of InStaffs, I want to know what's important to you. So Coach Maddie's been heavily into nutrition. Now she's heavily into female hormones. Tate, my training director, he's heavy into all things speed, all things VBT, force plates. Like, those are all the things that we're driving his education towards. My director of operations is still a very good coach. He actually does our assessments and evals. So information on that is still relevant to him. But my director of operations, I'm trying to get him more information on operations, right? He's got to be great at those type of things too. So as your business grows, differentiating the training doesn't require you to do all of it for them either. You can leverage resources that are out there. You can give them a continuing education budget. There's a lot of ways that you can help facilitate their growth. The key is that you're actually doing that to improve their training.
Correct. And it comes back to that cook-chef analogy, right? Like there may be, I mean, even with us, we spend a lot of time together. There's parts of the business that I'm like, man, you crushed that, right? Like, I will use your model.
Yeah.
Like the cooking model of that. Like, just like you might go like, man, like Luka's got these videos for development of my coaches. I don't have those, but I'm going to use them because I know he does it well. And if your ego's left out of it, right, it's kind of like, but now, like, hey, here's the standard.
Yeah. Luka's
doing this great. Andy's doing this great. Cool. Let's put together this cookbook, but now you got to train in, right? Because that's where I said it yesterday. You don't ever have to be, to me, a chef is like, you know, you're exceptional at making your own programs and program design and whatever else. The cook is like, hey, you use Mike Bowl stuff, right? Like their model, and you get like, but you do it so well that you're just going through the cookbook and you get results. Your body of work keeps piling up using somebody else's model. Now, eventually you might want to be a chef and like change the model. Like I created my small group system myself, but I started, right, with something else that I was like, who's doing this well? What's the cookbook?
Absolutely.
And it took, 16 years of coaching small group. I started iterating it because I became more of a chef.
Yeah.
But people try to jump to the chef without being a great cook. And in our business is still like, there's stuff that is, good. I want to take it to excellent, right? And somebody else is doing it excellent. It might not even be the business of fitness.
Yes.
It might be a restaurant business.
Hospitality industry
absolutely.
Or something like that.
And I'm like, holy shit, like I'm gonna do that and bring it in, and that's my cookbook, and let me keep working it till we're very good at it. So I think this is such an important lesson because you can take what we're saying. By the way, great book is Systemology.
Yes.
We both read through this one.
Systemology is a good
Systemology
one. To help organize your framework of how to manage your systems.
Correct. I'll give you like this quick breakdown before we move forward on this. But like you could record a podcast on every one of your systems, have a person transcribe it, and then turn it into a checklist of systems. You could literally in a day go, your 6 to 8 main systems. You don't have to do 100. I think that's a fear of a lot of people. And within, a couple weekends, you got a working model that you can clean up. So check that out. From there, though, I do want to touch on the where part of the people. So,
yeah. So where do they go in the organization? And I think what is kind of a limiting factor for a lot of gym owners is they're hiring, like they're reactive to hiring. I need a coach. I need an admin. One thing that helped me is that one of the very first books that was recommended to me was the E-Myth Revisited, right? And they tell the story, I want to say it's like an apple pie business that the woman has. And they talk about an org chart or an accountability chart, and it was her in every box. And, that's how most people run their business. It's like, I do everything.
And the thing is that you start there, and that's normal.
Yep.
But then it's like, how soon can you start changing those boxes? And especially like the boxes that you'll never be great at.
Yes.
That is not your core competence, that somebody else can do better than you. And if you do something else for that hour, which coaching, you're probably gonna make like a whole lot more money than outsourcing to somebody that's better than you for a lot less money.
Yes.
Right? And that's where do people go on an org chart?
So one of the things that I kind of found by hiring some friends of mine who do consulting, they do multiple gyms, I was like, what don't I know? And they exposed kind of one thing to me was that the job descriptions have to be very clear, the shifts, the pay, all these things need to be done up front. But not just that, the job training like we talked about, the metrics of how you're going to evaluate them. You need to have all this built out for every single box on your org chart. Otherwise, what you start doing is you like start putting this guy here and putting this guy there, and you're like, okay, I hope they do a good job, but you're not really clear on how to move them in that direction. And part of the where too, so like, I actually responded to a guy today, he said something about like, a way for a coach to lose their motivation is to have them do lead nurture. And I said, it's a strong opinion, but that's far from a fact. Because I think there are certain people that, sure, all they'll want to do is coach.
Yeah.
But if you're honest with them, like, hey, look, there's always going to be a limitation to how much I can pay you as a coach. Like, for sure, okay? But if you will learn the ancillary skill sets of lead gen, lead follow-up and lead nurture, sales, marketing, pipeline management, all of these things now give you the opportunity to make more money in my organization and yourself ascend higher on the org chart into a leadership position. But most training gym owners do not build a gym like that. They have 14, 15 coaches that give them 2 hours a week because they think coaches can't handle other duties. I just absolutely disagree with that. And I may be biased because I got 3 killers that are just willing to do whatever is required for us to grow. And, you know, it comes back to the who's. Those are the 3 best hires I've ever made in my life. They know the what, and not just like the what from the training and all those things. It's like what's possible for me in the organization. If I do a good job here, I move to the leadership team. If one day I want to open a gym, Andy will partner with me. They know what's going on, right? So that allows you to like identify the best people and figure out where do they fit on that org chart in the best way. And some people, like you love doing the coaching and training. So like there's a part of you that will always be a little tethered to that. And like, if that's you, you need to know that because
Correct.
You may not need to hire a full-time coach if you're doing 20 coaching hours a week. And Luka does a fantastic job of that. I am at a point where I don't want to coach. That requires me to drive more revenue in my business. That requires me to be very clear on these leadership positions. So it's everything that we're talking about. Like you have to have the clarity, you have to know what you're doing, and then you have to have like the skill set to know how to do all this stuff as well.
And you know, this is a great example too, because for any coach, the way I look at it and the way I explain it, what you said too, right? Is, hey, if all you want to do is coach, hey, you're gonna coach a lot, you're gonna crush it, man, cool. But sales, like incredible skill set to build. I would even say,
if you coach people every day, that should be like.
That's what I'm saying. Sales is persuasion, it's influence. And getting better at that, getting better at marketing makes you better a coach. See, that's when I realized that. But now you have other abilities to do things. And again, so you can do other stuff and get paid more for it. And if you move on forward, run your own business, open up your own gym, like you now have built those skill sets.
Yeah.
If you don't, and you know, maybe at the beginning of your career, you're like, all I want to do is coach. But then you never develop skills. It's like, yeah, you know what? I do want to kind of, but you're at 0 or you're at a very low level. Now it's going to take so much more for you to build that skill set. You know, and you don't have that talent. You know, open a gym. How many people do I know that are like, I'm a great coach, I'm opening up a gym. I know nothing about system sales, marketing, right? Like, and then all of a sudden you're like, that whole idea of, you know, just jump off a cliff, build a parachute on the way down.
Build it and they will come.
And it
Sometimes
doesn't work.
They do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, see, I was a great book from Adam Grant called Originals talks about, there's actually data and statistics and goes, the people that do the, you know, jump off a cliff, build a parachute on the way down, most of them die. Meaning that when you look at even Ellison, when he built Oracle, like you look at all these stories, what they did is they worked, they had a safety net, they hustled on the side, they built their business up to a certain level, and then they exited. And it was like, okay, cool, I have enough, you know, to eat ramen noodle, whatever else, right? Now, that's the majority of people, right? I tell people, I started my business I was working full-time at Vision Quest, but then like 30 minutes away, right, I had my garage gym, got up super early in the morning, you know, I did work 16-hour days of coaching, but it's like at the moment where I was like, okay, now if all I do is my gym, I can pay for rent, I can pay for the bare minimum, but I'm not gonna die and be broke in the streets, right? But now I get all this time to put into my business. It was a strategic decision. So this idea, you know, that like, forget about those skills. I'm like, man, we live in a world now where like you need competence and skills. You become more valuable. And for people like us, if you come on board, like I can see that like you're good with social media. Like you're, you know, like, man, I know how to use these apps and do this and do that. You do? Hey man, you think you can do like 3 videos for us, for Vigor and for da-da-da? Yeah, no problem. Great. I'm gonna pay you extra. I'm gonna give you more opportunities, right? Show me for the next 60 days, and then maybe we put you in XYZ position because you had that skill. So, and I'm just picking that one skill to make an example.
No, that makes sense. But let me say this: like, for those of you that are listening, whether you're a business owner or somebody that works for a gym owner, I want you to understand this. This is one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a guy that owns a $50 million business. The only reason you should ever hire somebody is if they make you more money or they offload some time sucker commitment. So I want you to think about this. If you're a trainer and you work for a good gym where the owners really know what a good training product is, and they believe in hiring cooks, not chefs, if you think you're going to somehow persuade that owner to keep paying you more money just because you're a great coach, you may be disappointed, because most gym owners are only going to pay you what the margins dictate. So you have to find a way to make that business more money. Now, if you want to stay on the coaching side, you could use your coaching skills to go out and recruit more people and bring them into the gym. That might be another way for you to make money. But if you find that you don't mind the idea of like learning about sales, follow-up, lead gen, now you have increased your value to that owner. If you're good at lead gen, he doesn't have to hire an agency to do lead gen. So now some of that money that he would have paid an agency, that can go in your pocket. But I mean this with all sincerity. I would love to pay you as much as humanly possible, but there are margins that dictate what I can pay you, and it has nothing to do with how good you are. That is the truth. So you have to build more skills to be more valuable to a gym. Now, if you're a solopreneur, you want to do things on your own, this doesn't apply to you. You charge as much as you want. But I'm talking to a trainer who works inside a training gym and an owner who has to make very hard decisions on where do I spend this money. There's a limit to what they can pay you as a coach and a trainer.
That's such a good point. I was like, sometimes I scour like the Facebook groups, you know, like whether it's PN, this, that, the other, and I read comments because it's just interesting to me for where people are. And some new coach was, you know, like, hey, you know, like I'm getting paid this much per hour. I was like 55, you know, do you think I'm getting underpaid? You know, and there was a lot of gym owners in there that were like, take that right now. I could never pay you that, you know. Obviously you don't know which state it is, what type of model it is, but I rarely ever comment. I said, hey, like, you know, as a gym owner of almost 20 years, like, man, like, you don't, because somebody said, do you have a leads? Nope. Do you have no? They get you all the leads? Yep. I'm like, whoa. Dude. I'm like, I don't know if that business will stay in business for long, but like, while it does,
you need to look at their financials.
I don't know, you know, I don't have enough context around it. But my point being is, from the outside in, you know, it's very easy to say, and you've probably dealt with this, where it's just like, man, like, you know, this is how much is charged. Like, this is how much I should make. But it's like, based on what? Like, you don't know the operations of the business, how much it costs to run a business, and to have a healthy margin. Like, you're in business to make a profit.
Yeah.
If you start cutting into a healthy margin, you're jeopardizing the business, and now you're jeopardizing everybody, really.
Oh, and I want to. You made a great point there, so I want to add on to that. I had a guy recently who I did end up hiring him, but I should have seen the red flag up front. And I know this is a popular thing in the world now, so gym owners, be prepared for this, but he tried to negotiate more pay up front based on what our entry level was. And I just kind of shut it down. It was like, hey man, listen, I would love to pay you as much as possible. I kind of explained to him what I just explained here. I said, but I want to reflect something back to you. You're operating under a value proposition that neither of us know is true. You haven't done a day's worth of work in here yet, and you're already asking for more money. What I will tell you is if you can come in here and make an impact and you can help make more money for this gym, you will make more money. But right now you're coming in at an entry-level position because that's what we've identified you as, an entry-level candidate. So there will be, I talked to some people this weekend that they have really good trainers who have really good reputations, and they've kind of, in my opinion, or this is the way I would explain it, is they've actually been bullied into paying them more than they should.
Yes.
And when you're a gym owner and you're operating from a place of scarcity like that, like I have to pay this person before they're going to leave me, that is, you are no longer leading things, you are being led. So I think that's important for people to understand.
Is. I mean, this whole podcast we created so we could have conversations
like this
usually are not done, and it's hard conversations. I think it's good on both sides, right? Because if somebody's coming in and like you want to develop, you go to gyms like ours, you're going to get developed in a lot of different ways. And you have a lot of opportunities and skill sets that you can build. But you don't have to understand all the nuts and bolts behind it. But we're giving you this stuff so that you understand why these decisions are made. And if you're an owner and you're going like, ugh. By the way, how many people have I coached and you have coached where I shared a story where I helped a business grow by 60% in a pretty short amount of time. And they were still in the red. They were in the red from the get-go. And I said, I got to look at all these numbers. And so we kind of, opened the kimono, and it was like, whoa, the pay to the coaches was so high that the model could never work.
Never work.
Never work.
Yeah.
So we could continue to grow, and it wouldn't matter, right? Because, and obviously the hard decisions had to be made, but it's like if you sign a bad lease, it's going to be tough to run a good model. If you have a bad structure of pay where it doesn't work out, and in that scenario, the coaches were making double, if not more, than the owners. Owners sometimes not paying themselves. Of course, resentment went through the roof. The owners were working all the time. Coaches were. So the model from the get-go was set to not work. Things were going to go wrong. So again, this is important. I'm glad that we went down this rabbit hole.
Me too.
Because this leads us to, it's a little connected here, but like this is a huge one. Process, which is the systems, what we call playbooks.
Process is attached to everything.
To everything.
You know what I mean?
Because we talked about the process for training, right? For coaching, but really what it comes down to, I think that going back to that systemology, I liked, people don't create systems because they think, oh my God, I have to make 100 systems, right? And it's like, no, you just need to make your 6, 8, 10 that are most important.
Yeah.
Start there, and you can kind of build from there. But what, to me is like generating leads, important system, right?
And I would put that under the marketing system.
Marketing
right?
system,
These
correct.
are all other little
correct.
smaller systems, or what we call playbooks, that need to be inside of those macro
systems. But marketing is like, this is how you attract people, right?
Yep.
Sales system, that's how you convert people.
How you close.
And then you have like coaching onboard, like let's just put it coaching, because it's like onboarding of client and what you do with that client that gets you the results. And then of course, like for the financial system and the operations system, right? Here's 5 that like, man, those ones are pretty damn important. You should like create them, right?
there.
And you can start there. But most people do not have them, right? Like, and again, sometimes just take the cookbook. By the way, in our coaching program, our 100-day coaching program that we're launching, like we're giving you actually we started with over 20 playbooks of our businesses, like step by step what to do. And we're continuing every month to actually drop new playbooks, videos plus actual PDFs that come along with it, so that you can be basically just do the cookbook, scenario, and not have to create yours from scratch, because we've done this for a long time and tested it. So on a process side, it's by the way, there's another thing. If you're doing things well, we help you create the system so it can be replicable. Because I know we're not short on time, but we do want to get done to a certain degree. But
I got to do brunch. Only got one more day in town. I need brunch.
So 3 things that we'll go a little bit faster through, but I do want to have you talk about, which is number 1, profit, managing margins. We talked about managing margins a little bit, but if you could kind of give your top 2 to 3 insights in that space, mistakes that you see people make, and kind of like what should be done in your opinion.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm going to make a comment about systems and playbooks. Think about your sales system as like when somebody comes in, how you build rapport, how you ask questions, how you show them your system, how you're going to solve problems, and how you close. That's the sales system. But what happens if they don't close, right? There's a playbook for that. What happens if they do close? There's a playbook for that, right? So that's an example of the macro down to the micro. In regards to profit, it's really about managing margins, right? So this is one of the things that helped me a lot. I'm an ex-knucklehead that was kicked out of multiple schools, and I got girls to do my homework for me the vast majority of my life, okay? So math was something that was really hard for me at first. I've really leaned into it now. But when I started to realize that there are these just metrics that I can apply to my business to ensure I'm running a healthy business. And if I just played inside these margins, it would force me to build a business that could do that. It saved my life and a lot of headaches because I'm a human too. I could be victim of overpaying people. I could be victim of going into the wrong type of real estate because of how cool it looks. I could be a victim of buying all the best fancy equipment because I love equipment. But when I had these numbers to go by, it gave me a way to filter my thoughts and make better decisions. So the number one thing that has helped me is the profit first system. Profit first in and of itself has kept me out of my own way. Every dollar that comes into my gym is allocated into an account. So we're always planning for future hires, for taxes, for incentives for my coaches that are on salary. So at the end of the year, everything is in its nice little bucket and I know exactly what to do with it. This is why through the pandemic, we didn't miss a payroll. My entire team got paid the entire time because we've been planning ahead for it, okay? So profit first is the number one thing that I recommend when it comes to like really running at a high level of profit.
Which, by the way,
yeah, we will show you how to do it. And my Profit
yeah.
First Pro, if any of you guys have ever read the book, Profit First for Micro Gyms, I work with that CPA's company, and Erin, who's mentioned in the book, is my CPA or my Profit First Pro. And she's an absolute ninja, and anybody that's involved in our coaching program would have some access to Erin for her to do a profit assessment on your business and see how to set up your allocations. But another thing that's been really helpful for me is just managing net margin. Running it around 30% is ideal, and the higher you can drive it up, the better. And again, this comes somewhat back to like model, what we talked about before. But if you're running the right model, you can really zone in on that profit number, and which is basically your net margin, right? So if you're running at under 30%, I'm going to encourage you to start focusing on acquisition, all right? If you're running at 35, 37%, like you are dominating life right now, and just stay right there. Now, you have to understand that if you make a big key hire or something like that, that might knock that down.
Yep.
So I'm always managing it that way, right? In the micro and the macro, running payroll scenarios, figuring out what I can do. We made 2 big shifts over to my management staff where I put them on salary. And before we ever did that, we ran multiple payroll scenarios just to see how that would affect that margin. And there's other ones that you need to look at, like we want like 65 to 75% margin based on all training sessions. That's what we're looking for. Like 65% on the smaller, 75 to 80 really on the more large group stuff. Those are things that all the businesses I've worked with and helped, if they hit those numbers, they're really profitable. And then there's other stuff to manage that will help you manage your margin. So managing session utilization and usage helps you get an idea of like what sessions am I running are profitable, which ones are not. And at times you might need to make hard decisions about shutting down a certain class. I don't like that idea, but what it then does is gives us an idea of where to drive more people.
Yeah.
And that does lead into performance a little bit if you want me to roll into that.
Absolutely.
So performance is, really about KPIs and KRAs. I'll start with KRAs. KRAs are key responsibility activities. And so, for example, my adult fitness coordinator, one of her key responsibility activities is any groups that are under 65% utilization, she has to send out a 9-word email every week to a list that she manages to fill that specific spot. So if it's Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. and we're not at our number, every week we're actually trying to fill that, right? But there are other KRAs that we give management, from lead follow-up, lead nurture, creating content, member reach outs. So you can create your own KRAs and just look at it as the activities outside of the coaching that are contextual to their role, okay? And then KPIs are the metrics that give you the ability to assess how well your business is doing. There's leading and lagging indicators that you can put on what's called a scorecard. A scorecard should be a snapshot of the health of your business. The way I had somebody explain it to me one time is if you were on a desert island and all you could get is like some homing pigeon to like drop off like a note, what would you want on that note to assess the health of your business? And at the very basics, you want leads, appointments, how many appointments showed, how many sales that you made, how many trials, and how many drops. You can expand that to upgrades, downgrades, referrals. If you have athletes and adults, they should probably be segmented So you can get pretty gnarly with a scorecard. But if you're not tracking data right now, don't do all that. Starts with leads, appointments, sales, trials, drops. Make that your scorecard and start tracking it every week. And once you start developing trends, you can use those trends to create targets, both at a 90-day level, down to a weekly level, and then all the way down to a daily level. And it's when you really have this type of data coming in, as a business owner too, it can give you peace of mind. I have a lot of very ambitious coaching clients, and they always feel like they're not winning. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And I'll say, hey, what's the data say? It's like, if the data says you're winning, cut it. You're winning, right? So it allows you to get out of that part of your brain that I think every entrepreneur has. Like, this could all fail tomorrow. Everybody's going to quit. If I don't keep going, I'm going to be a loser. We all suffer with that, you know? We all suffer. And whenever I'm in that place, I come back to the data. What's the data tell me? I get nervous, worried, frustrated, just like everybody else, but I have gotten very good at going, what's the data say? And if it says what I want it to say, I'm going to woo-saw my way out of that, and we're just going to be happy that there are no real problems. So I'm sure as heck not going to create any.
See, what you're talking about comes back to that GPS, right? Because we're just kind of breaking down these components where you know the things that you need to do, and you know the things that you need to look at that's taking you to, and by the way, you know, whether your dream business in life is a year out, 3 years out, but we're on the right track on a GPS, right? And look, by the way, you're always going to run into shit, right? Which, last part, we're going to talk problems, but I think that, you know, this idea, if you kind of zoom out, everything that we're talking about is like, it's not super complicated, but it's not easy, but there's a framework, there's a structure. We always know what to go back to tell us if we're going on the right track. And if you don't have these systems, and I think if you don't have the accountability, right, that's where you start veering off. That's where you start veering off. Or sometimes it's like, man, I'm going down this path, but it's like, yeah, but dude, this path is leading you that way. You're working, but you want to, like, your dream life's that way, right? So that's so important. Now, going to the problems part is the last P in the 8P's. Talk to me about that, because I mean, obviously, it's like business is problems. Thinking that you're not gonna have problems
kind of
makes you crazy. And actually, it's like, then you should never go to business. But how do you deal with that and the frameworks around the problems when it comes to inside of the business?
Yeah, so the way I look at problem solving is there's two ways to tackle them. Meetings that don't suck and planning ahead, right? So one, we annual plan for the whole year in December. Early in December, we look at 2025 and we plan out the whole year. Everything that we're going to do from a marketing standpoint, the targets for every single month, what rocks our coaches are going to focus on. We do a SWOT analysis. There's a host of things we do to plan for all that. But then we also do that on a 90-day level. So we look at the whole year, but then we also plan out by the quarter. This is being proactive to get out in front of problems. So most gym owners probably know quarter 3 and quarter 4 are pretty rough. If you know that you're going to lose, if you're a sport performance owner, you're going to lose a bunch of football players in September. Well, you could run more content towards basketball players, baseball players. Or if you work with adults, you just drive all your focus into adults because you know you're going to have this dip in athletes, right? So you can plan ahead for those things if you track data and you look at it. When we look at the annual, it's like, I know what months are going to be challenging for us. So then we plug in strategic campaigns to try to fill those gaps or stock the pond for leads. That way we can take advantage of that later on when people are more in a buying mindset, right? So the planning is so important. Then you come down to the meetings, and there's a couple meetings that we use. One is a weekly level 10 meeting. This is the most important meeting of the week. It's primarily for your leadership team. We are checking in on data, rocks, to-dos, but the big component of this meeting is about problem solving. So you want to create a culture of identifying problems and solving them. And your team has to know that it is okay to raise their hand in a meeting and be like, hey, listen, I don't think our onboarding is efficient as it could be. I had somebody come into my group this week. I was unaware of their injury history, whatever it is. I'm just kind of spitballing. But you have to create this environment where coaches will say these things, right? And the level 10 meeting is a great way to do that. Then the next meeting that we do our level 10 on Monday. It's to make everybody aware of the targets and what we need to get done and to like knock down any issues before we even start our week. On Tuesday, I have a management meeting with my director of operations and my director of training. They have individual projects that they're working on that are really important to the growth of the company. So we're really just checking in on those things. And then like, what do you need from me? How can I help you with your job more? And I used to come into every meeting and feel like I needed to be presenting and doing all these things. Like that management meeting, I come in and I sit down. It's like, okay, guys, what do you need from me? And they know what they have to report back to me. So again, they've been trained on how to do that. On Friday, we have a training meeting. My original thought here is it would be used for like training education. Like that would be a place we could do that. And we do that some. And we will be doing that more the back end of this year. But Tate, who's my training director, has been using that as more like of a logistical meeting to make sure that the schedule is really buttoned up, nobody's going out of town, any of those things might come up. So that's our weekly meeting structure there. Level 10, management, training at the end of the week, all right? Another meeting, though, that we use regularly is what we call walk and talks. Walk and talks, because I am almost operationally irrelevant from the gym, is my way to stay connected to my team. Now, we are unusually close. I know them incredibly well, but what I try to do with them every week, and there has been times where it was every week, is we just go walk and talk the parking lot. And it's more so like just checking on, like, how's your life? How's your kids? What'd you think about the ball game this weekend? Hey, man, I saw you're kind of tired. Like, I want you to know, I know how much you got on your plate right now. I know I put it on there, but I want you to know, like, if you need a couple of days off, man, communicate with me. We'll make this happen, right? So it's your way to create a little more bonding capital with your team. We don't talk about business hardly at all on these walk and talks. It's more just like, how are you managing your energy? Because that's the key to managing productivity. When somebody's energy starts going down, and that could be family related, could be health related, right? Could maybe not sleeping enough. Like, those are great little questions or conversations to have with your team that will help them be more productive and keep the business moving in the right direction.
And you get ahead of stuff, right? Because it's like, I mean, it's not just the system, because you're talking about systems that you get ahead of problems and or you solve problems in real time with people. And sometimes people are bringing a problem that you don't know about.
That's right.
Because you empower them to do that.
You created a container, right, where that can happen.
Absolutely. Man, like okay, so that's, each one of these, I mean, we could probably
We could do an hour on each one of these.
Easy. Well, we will.
Yeah,
so
okay, all right.
We will in the future.
Sounds good.
We will in the future. But the whole premise, like, part of this is like, as you're listening to this, I think one of the key things is give insights, but hopefully create, go from sometimes unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, right? Whoa, I recognize I'm not doing that well. Dude, I don't know my margins. I don't know how many people should be in class for us to be profitable the right way. Man, I don't do a profit first system. We don't, right? And instead of being overwhelmed, this is where you get curious. This is where you research. This is where you go one step at a time. You're not trying to fix everything, and start addressing it. So again, that you can build your business so it can last. And or what you could do is reach out to us in the DMs, on Instagram, wherever it may be.
Down in the DMs.
And for again, like when this drops, like we're probably going to be about a week out from launching October 28th, the 100-day built to last gym coaching program, where we'll basically, like all these things that we're talking about, the P's, we're helping you integrate these into your business. Now, depending where you are in your business, in 100 days, our goal is to help your business grow more than in the last 2 years, right? This is full contact coaching program, meaning every week we have live coaching calls. We have school community where you'll be able to communicate with us, ask questions and actually get answers directly. No bots, no crazy shit. Like, it's us helping you out. And then get all of our playbooks, meaning like the back end systems that we just talked about. Like, you'll get access to those. You'll get our 100-day marketing plan that you can take, right? You'll get, our B5 method. We'll get our Dream Life Business webinar so you can actually create your own dream business, dream life point B, and so much more. You can actually check it out, like inquire about, literally reach out to us. We'll send you more information. We'll get on a call if you want to. But like, this is literally what we do. This is why we started this show, is to help, again, and just give as much as we possibly can. But we also know that, like from the get-go, we said, man, the most progress that we've made in our lives is having coaches, being in masterminds, being in programs that drive us forward through education, insights, accountability of doing the right stuff. So if you're somebody that's a gym owner, sports performance business owner, make sure you reach out to us, and then we'll get back to you. And listen, if you love this show, if you want more of this, let us know what more you'd want to hear. Make sure you click the subscribe button, leave a review, give us a 5 stars. If you think it was great and it's 5 stars, if not, man, give us a 4. But probably not. You know what I mean?
Don't give us a 4. Only 5 stuff.
But we'll be back with this because we really our goal with this show is to truly kind of rip open the businesses, to come on, give you all the best stuff. Sometimes we're going to go into the micro and give you full-blown models of stuff. We're going to bring guests on the show that are running incredible gyms all around the country and even the world and give their insights. And this is going to become a resource for every gym and sports performance business owner in the world. And we're not going to stop. We're going to just give you guys the best. With that said, we'll see you next time in the Built to Last Gym podcast. Peace out.
Take care.